You know the drill, like and subscribe. And thanks for joining us. We are going to get started in just a moment here. Our guest today is Shonali Burke. She is well known and respected in the business communication circles as a strategist. She has 2 decades of experience in branding and marketing and measurement. And she's a recent graduate of the Harvard Business Analytics program. And I'm excited to reconnect with her here today. Shonali, welcome to the Earned Media Podcast.
Eric, thank you so much for inviting me. It is such a pleasure to be here, and it's just so good to see you, my friend.
I've been trying to get you for so long, but you're so busy. I can never.
I was studying. I had my head down in R and SQL and Python.
So is it hard? Is it a hard program?
Oh my God. Yes.
So tell us about, first off, it's not like, you weren't already a very accomplished professional in our industry. So it's a big decision to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to make the investment and I'm going to get this credential from Harvard in digital analytics. What was it what were you hoping to achieve by doing it? Why did you do it?
Thank you so much for being so kind. And I really appreciate it. And yeah, so for everybody who's still kind of wondering what the program is, it's the Harvard Business Analytics program. And I actually didn't realize, Eric, this was live. I wish I'd actually told my HBAP cohorts and friends, because some of them might have tuned in, but I will be sharing the link later. And so there was actually a few different things that happened. So as you know, Eric, and everybody else will know who doesn't know me now, 2018 was kind of a big year for me. It was one of those big life years. My husband passed away very unexpectedly. My mother passed away 7 months after he did, and I was diagnosed with a tumor on my parathyroid, one of my parathyroid glands. That most people don't know about that. It turned out to be benign. I had surgery for that, several months later. And it turned out to be benign, but there were a lot of big life events that happened in very close proximity. And I needed time, dealing with everything. I needed to take a step back and figure out how to kind of pick up the pieces of my life from the rubble of devastation. And I was very fortunate that, I'd had a very good book of consulting business. As you know, I've also been teaching at Johns Hopkins for many, many years. And at the end of 2018, I said, okay, I'm done. I need to stop. I need to breathe, because I hadn't really given myself a chance to start to heal. I was so busy. This is just the plain truth. I was so busy running from the pain that I couldn't start moving further in the grief process. So that process started in 2019. And as I kind of moved through this process of reinvention in a way, I was wondering how to pick things up with my career. And my colleagues, you and my other friends, everyone has just been so supportive and so kind, and really kind of gave me the space I needed. And I love PR, I love marketing, I love business communications, I love measurement, as you know, but I've done it for a long time. And I've been feeling, around the time that John passed, I'd really been feeling the need to freshen and extend my skills. So I knew I wanted to do something that improved my skills and maybe deepen my skill set, particularly in metrics and analytics, but I didn't know quite what. I also knew I really wanted to focus my work on purpose-driven work and work in social impact and equity. And I wasn't quite sure how to bring those two together. So serendipitously, an ad for HBAP showed up in my Facebook newsfeed. And when I saw the description of the curriculum, when I saw that it is, as they say, a 3-shield program that is, has faculty from Harvard Business School, the School of Engineering, the School of Arts and Sciences. And it's not just about, refreshing your statistics or going deeper into statistics. For me, it was pretty deep. I hadn't done it since college. Or, teaching you new technical languages like R or SQL or Python, helping you to understand what is behind artificial intelligence, what are the building blocks of machine learning, but really look at everything from the lens of digital transformation and understanding how historically technology has driven digital transformation, what you need to know as a business leader or as a technical expert who wants to speak the language of business to take your organization or your clients through that process of digital transformation and really move towards being a more modular and agile organization that is harnessing data, that understands how to identify the data that's sitting everywhere within an organization and how to harness and leverage it for that transformation to be successful. So when I saw the description of the various pieces of the program, I was just terrified. And I was like, I understand maybe 5% of all of this. So that tells me that I really have to learn what is going on here, and what better of a place to do it than Harvard. So I thought a lot about it because, as you said, it is a very big investment, not just financially, but of time and effort. It's a very rigorous program, very, very rigorous. And I thought a lot about it. I, looked at a few other programs, but I couldn't shake HVAP. And so I applied, and the rest is history.
So it's obviously, probably the most elite academic institution in the world. So, you've got that sort of that stamp of approval now of having completed that program. When I was doing some research about the program to prepare for our discussion today, I went to SEMrush and I just put in Harvard Business Analytics Program. And the number one question that people search is the cost.
It's on the program website.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, people are going to want to know. So I just, could you tell us? Do you know offhand what it is, or?
It's not inexpensive. I paid, my cost was about $51,000.
And it took how long to complete?
I completed the program in 18 months. So there's, I have to say 2U administers a program for Harvard, and 2U is just wonderful. I think administers so many different programs for so many different universities, and they do a fabulous job with HVAP. So they have a setup where you have students, you have, I think they're called enrollment counselors, for prospects, and their marketing funnel is excellent. So they're excellent at answering questions, doing webinars for people who are interested. I do those quite often because I am a volunteer student ambassador for the program as well. And they will help you if you do apply and, and you decide to enroll. They will help you structure the program in a way that works for your schedule. So you could you could complete the program in as little as 9 months. That's what's called the full-time track. So the way the program is structured is you have 6 core courses. Those are each week, 8 weeks. You have 2 seminars that are 2 weeks long, and then you have 2 immersions that used to be on campus, but now because of COVID have not been, that are about 2.5 to 3 days. The format in general is that you have a lot of async work that you have to prepare through the week. You have to attend at least one live peer session with peers in your class to discuss the questions that have been presented to you, or the case. Tons of cases. It's Harvard Business School, so it's it's a case study method and methodology, and then you have live classes. So it's a really interesting blend of async and synchronous learning, and the live classes are a ton of fun. They're also very scary because Professor Lakhani, who is one of the co-chairs of the program, kind of warns you that you can be cold called in true HBS fashion, and so everyone's like, oh my god, am I going to get cold call? What happens? And so it's very intense. I don't think anyone realizes how intense it's going to be until they start. So you have to do all of those, you have to complete all of those components in order to graduate the program. I initially thought that I would be try to finish in 9 months, because back then I was like, oh, I'm going to get through this, move on. It's like, yeah. And the universe was like, ha, ha, ha. So I ended up taking 18 months, which I'm grateful that I did, because, there were some of the courses were more challenging than others. One of the two core courses, as the foundational courses that you have to do right in the beginning, are DSI, which is Digital Strategy and Innovation, where they walk you through the building blocks of digital transformation. Is just fabulous, one of my favorite courses. And then the second is the Foundations of Quantitative Analysis, which is hardcore stats and probability, and you're learning R at the same time. So if you haven't learned R, there's like a whole bunch of learning curves going on. However, there are people who take a break. Maybe something's come at work or family or, anything else. So they are very flexible in how they, in what you need, in giving you what you need, because the goal obviously is to have everyone have a good learning experience and hopefully graduate the program.
So you enrolled in the program when?
I started in October of 2019.
So let's say that the value of Bitcoin when you started was, I don't know, we'll say 5,000 a coin.
Okay.
It was 50,000, then it dropped to 40,000. If you would have taken $50,000 and put it into Bitcoin at $5,000, then the value would have been, I'm so bad at math, I need to take the analytics program just to do the math for this.
I have my handy dandy trusty calculator too.
I'm on the spot. Anyways, if you would have invested 50,000 in Bitcoin and made back, say, $5 million in the same course of span of time that you put it into yourself and got the degree, would you switch? Would you rather have the 5,000 Bitcoin winning?
Nope, absolutely not. Now, that's a great analogy and a great, I love that we're talking about HBAP. And I know you said we're going to talk about the program, but I didn't realize that was really like all the focus. So the student success advisors and people at HBAP are going to be so happy, because this is like, whoa, this is the best publicity for them. But no, absolutely, because it sounds cliched, but I don't think you can really overestimate maybe investing in yourself. So let's say I had $5 million, and I'm still got to do something, whether I could buy a couple houses, flip them maybe, but I still need to keep my mind sharp. I need to do something to be of service in the world. I think.
So then if you were independently wealthy, you would still have gotten the degree.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And now that you have the degree,
I am not independently wealthy, even though I have the degree, not yet, at least.
How has it changed? First of all, how long has it been since you've had the degree?
I graduated officially on March 31st of 2021. So it's not been long.
It just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you found like a whole watershed of new opportunities, or any new opportunities at all? Like, are you now a different person in terms of your qualifications and the type of work you're going to go after? How does this change your professional outlook? Because do you have an APR?
I don't, but I got my accreditation. I earned my accreditation from IABC many years ago. So
okay, so you had that accreditation. Now you have this new accreditation. How do you think this accreditation will compare to the IABC accreditation that you got?
I don't think it can compare, simply because it's just completely different. This is much broader. The focus is not business communication. The focus is business analytics. And one of the things that was very interesting to me as I went through the program was how critical communication and good business communication is to digital transformation. So when I started the program, I didn't know what how I'd end up or where I'd end up. Would I want to pivot careers completely? Would I want to move? I'm geeky enough that I really enjoy, the data stuff, right? And the statistics. I mean, I'm nowhere near an expert in R or anything like that, but it is awesome to be able to look at anything and go, okay, what is the research question we're trying to answer here? What are the relationships between these variables? And really, if you think about it, statistics is all about relationships. Does variable X, is there a correlation between X and Y? Are there any confounding factors? Can we say with some certainty or with confidence that this has an effect on that? Right. And that's, if you think about it, Eric, we've talked so much in the past and worked on measurement and educating PR professionals on measurement and analytics. And that's the question, right? That's always the question. Did our work in earned media or, peso or whatever you want to call it, did our work in PR and comms, can we say with confidence that it supported business outcomes and helped lead to XYZ? So I was not sure where I would end up from a career point of view once I graduated the program. And I'm very fortunate that between teaching and, I was able to not have to work full-time during the program. My hats off to everybody who does, because for me, studying was a full-time job, really. And what I learned through the program is exactly what I just said, is that communication is so critical to digital transformation that I feel that's where the opportunity is for people like you and me, for people in our industry who are not scared or willing to walk through their fear when it comes to dealing with analytics and learning about analytics and metrics. I think there's a huge opportunity for what we call the truly data-driven communicator to use not just all of these, these are a lot of left brain learnings, but to use a lot of what we've done for decades that sit more in the right brain space and bring them together to help businesses transform, to help organizations transform, and connect more effectively and authentically and transparently and ethically with their audiences to make the world a better place. And I know that sounds cheesy, but that's what I want to do. So that's what I've always wanted to do. And having been through HBAP, now having a better grasp on the language of data, on the language of analytics, I feel puts me in a really strong position to go back to work, because I do want to go back in-house for a purpose-driven organization working in social impact and do just that and really start to ramp up the change that we want to see have happen in the world.
When you think about the term digital transformation, it connotes the idea that an organization would become more efficient and more profitable by automating business functions that used to be performed manually by human beings. And so digital transformation, not always directly, but in some way affects jobs. Digital transformation usually means that some person somewhere in some industry will be adversely affected by this new automation. And, I'm reading Kevin Roos's book, Future Proof Now, which talks quite about this. And, the argument that, well, yeah, it does eliminate some jobs, but it creates jobs in other industries. Well, not always, it doesn't always. There are winners and there are losers. There have been in the past, and there probably will be this time out. But here you are saying, not only are you interested in digital transformation, but you're interested in digital transformation for social impact and equity. So when you say that, do you mean you would like to go in-house to a company or an organization that is focused on social impact and equity, or that you would go into maybe an enterprise or Fortune 500 and help them with responsible digital transformation in a way that is, I guess, will do the least amount of harm?
Either or. Either or. I think if it's the latter, in a really large organization of Fortune 500, as you said, I think there are some that are doing amazing work. I think it has to, I don't know where this position necessarily sits. It might sit in communication, it might sit in brand, it might sit in strategy, it might sit in something called global impact or social impact. I have no idea. So for me, it's less important where it sits than what I get to do. And also what I realize is that, I do have this body of experience and expertise that I've worked very hard to develop in communications and marketing. And I'd really be doing not just my next employer, but also my industry a great disservice if I just ignored that. So I really want to make sure I'm using my communication expertise while also understanding the language of digital transformation. Because, people like us, we can serve as interpreters, essentially, between the different departments of an organization, between the data scientists and other business units, to really understand what we need to be looking at, how we parse the data, how do we set up these algorithms, or what do we need to tweak? Are we asking the right questions? Are we looking at the right variables? Are we making sure we've thought of everything? Are we doing it in an ethical way? Are we accounting for bias? What are we doing to make sure the playing field is as equitable as possible for our stakeholders and for our customers, for our employees? So it could be either or, but those are kinds of the questions I think that going through this program, it makes me think about this a lot, and it's really kind of highlighted how important all of this is to me and what a critical role communication plays in it.
It's interesting how we've become, I should say white people have become more aware of the disparate civic reality that people of color live in from white people. I didn't really know that. I sort of learned that through through the George Floyd murder, and through a personal exploration with the guidance of people like Cheryl Proctor Rogers, through different readings and information that opened my eyes to just how different the reality I live in is from a person of color. And I wonder also if the social media bubble filter algorithms, which polarize us in disparate point of views by showing us more of the same in an effort to sustain our attention and show us more advertisements. If my awareness of that has also fed my awareness that really people of color have never enjoyed the same civic reality that I enjoy. And I wonder if there's if you have any thoughts around that, and how you might be able to help bring that awareness to maybe an organization.
First of all, thank you for saying that. And I appreciate your honesty. I really do. And not just people of color, but people of different backgrounds experience different things. I think, and when I say, I mean different ethnic backgrounds. So, for example, I'm a brown person, but my brown experience might be very different from somebody else's. I think the very fact, it's what you said at the end. It's realizing that it's not equitable, that there is equality and equity are not the same thing. And just saying, oh, we have a D&I program, what does that mean? Just because I don't even want to go into what examples of those, but talking about diversity and inclusion is not the same as actually making sure people have access to what you are offering. One of my professors, and knowing that and actually acknowledging it is, I think, the first step. And it takes a lot, I think, to get that conversation going in an organization, especially larger ones, especially if they have not been built on a foundation of equity, or it's never been It's never been a big deal because,
It's not just that. It's just if you're a white person
yeah.
and you went to public school, then you studied slavery for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
You didn't really
Yeah, you don't get it.
appreciate the impact that it had on our economy and how
Mhm.
it gave us a leg up and how there's been no repatriation. I mean, none of that. You don't understand. And your bias is not even conscious.
Exactly. It's
And the
completely
truth is, with a lot
unconscious.
of white people, like if you talk to white people about this, they're not even really aware. I
Yeah.
wasn't really aware before this whole thing.
Yeah.
I still could never, like when you say to me as a brown person, I don't know what it's like
Yeah.
to walk into a room and be judged by the
Yeah.
color of my skin. I never will.
Yeah. And I tell you
But
what,
if
you'll
we
also
had
never
some
know.
empathy, if there was more empathy
Yeah.
for education by teaching, like if I would have learned this stuff in school, I would have been more conscious and I would have done less harm. There's actually a bill circulating now, a Republican bill that's trying to ban any sort of education in public school that would say America is racist, which obviously is just sort of a blanket, you know, excuse to not teach this stuff to people, to not acknowledge it. When when the Nazis lost the war, they made a concerted effort to root the socialist agenda out of education, out of the courts, out of the arts, out of entertainment, everything. We didn't do that. What we did was we put up a few statues and we took a few army bases in the South and named them after Confederate generals and said, everything's fine, we're done, swept everything else under the rug so that there was no history of it. And of course, now we're destined to keep repeating these cycles of violence and civic unrest because we don't deal with it.
Yeah. I hope we're not destined for it. I mean, I really, really hope we're not. And I'm an immigrant. I didn't grow up here. I've been here now 21 years. So I am still amazed sometimes, or maybe I've just gotten more used to it. But when you said that you had like 2 weeks in school learning about slavery and that was it, I was like, wow. Wow.
It felt like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I recently watched Gandhi. I had never seen
Oh,
it.
did you?
I never saw the movie with Ben Kingsley, and I recently
Really?
watched it. And hey, man, that's a story of racism too. I mean, it's not
Oh,
just
yeah. Oh,
everywhere.
yeah. I mean, we could take this conversation a whole different direction with, the impact of colonialism and post-colonialism in many, many parts of the world. You want to, I really, I'm not a political expert, but if you look at conflict, almost always it stems back to, or it has roots in something similar to colonialism or, the political interests of a large Western country.
Let's switch gears for a moment and let's talk about social media.
Okay.
So you and I were sort of, social media cheerleaders for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And we spoke about the wonderful democratizing capabilities of social media at a time when Facebook and YouTube and Twitter were growing.
Mm-hmm.
They were not mature. They were trying to become mature companies, but they had not matured yet. They were in growth mode. And I think about like a Vegas hotel in growth mode versus a mature Vegas hotel. The Vegas hotel in growth mode is very happening because you go and things are inexpensive and the wine is cheap and the living is easy, but once they become the hot property, they're trying to squeeze every extra nickel out of you. Right. And that's what happened with the social networks, right? They matured, they became the dominant forces in their industry. And now if you want to get your Facebook friend's email address, you can't anymore. You used to be able to, but they shut that down. Right. And I'm looking back at kind of feeling kind of like a jerk that I was out there saying, oh, social media. I was basically building their business for them, and thinking that I had democratized the information stream when in fact, we had just popularized a platform for demagoguery is really what happened. And now I'm looking at AI and I'm
Mhm.
asking myself the same question. I'm looking at Clubhouse. I'm looking at Substack. I'm looking at TikTok. And I realize now that I can't build an audience on any of those platforms. I can build their audience, but not my audience. And so I wonder sort of if you would walk me through how you're feeling about social media then versus now.
I think similar to you back in the day, like you said, you and I were kind of in the social media pioneer group. I kind of feel weird saying that, but it's true. It's a fact. And it was exciting and new. It was completely mind-boggling and bewildering. And it kind of had this, I don't know, campfire feeling to it initially, I feel like. And of course, it's all of the things you described now. I do think there can still be a lot of value to be gained for it, but I think one just has to, I think one has to be very clear about what's happening, which is you're providing data. You're providing data to get a better user experience. You're providing data. It's a marketplace, but it's just a different marketplace. It's a different marketplace than what we were used to. It's somewhat it's more transactional, I think, than people think. But it's also relational because the transaction with the network allows you to build relationships for yourself. So I think, people like me, and I don't know how you've changed philosophically, but I've become more aware of, how much data I'm giving up. I'm one of those weird people. I always read the fine print. I always read the fine print. I read the fine print on everything. So I was aware.
Do you read terms of service agreements?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I kind of got to know, what's going to be here, what's not. And it's a decision. I think but as long as it's a conscious decision that we're making, that's one thing. It's when it's not conscious. It's when people are kind of, lulled into thinking it's one thing when it's not. That I really have a problem with. The problem, as you said, is that now Facebook specifically has become such a behemoth that you can't get away from it. And there have been efforts. There's one now, I can't remember the name of it, but, I think for a while, people were getting onto Elo, and there was maybe a different kind of the anti-Facebook social network. I can't remember which one it is, that promised not to do XYZ. There was a big influx to Signal not that long ago, especially when WhatsApp terms of service were changing. But everybody comes back to Facebook. Everybody comes back to Facebook. Everybody comes back to WhatsApp. I mean, I have family, I'm dealing with a bunch of stuff, in India, my brother's in Singapore, I have family in the UK. The only practical way for us to communicate is through WhatsApp. So it's life, unfortunately, that's the reality of this digital world that we live in. And it's a trade-off, just like anything else. So we're trading our information for convenience. We're trading our information, our likes and dislikes, for more targeted ads that help us make better purchasing decisions, that make life more efficient. If you look at, how China's taken it a whole other level. I mean, facial recognition there is your ticket to getting a plane ticket, literally, or being able to get a bus or not. It impacts, I think there's some kind of like a social score that you're given based on your social media activity and what you say and don't say and those kinds of things. And I was watching a documentary on it. I'm sure a lot of your audience has seen or heard of The Social Network, and I'm not talking about The Social Network, but there was a different one. I'll send you the name once I can find it. I think I saw it on Netflix recently. And this young woman, she's using her face to buy groceries because the iPad scans it, and the financial transaction happens in the cloud, obviously, because they know it's her. And she'll even use it to weed out people on a dating site, because whatever their score is, if it's not high enough, it's like, that's not that good of a match for me. And she was totally fine. She's like, yeah, I don't mind it. It's fine. It makes my life more efficient. And that's what it comes down to. So if we, as collectively, as a society, want the conveniences that come with data and the AI that powers our systems, that's the trade-off. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's the reality.
So many people talk about the importance of analytics and measurement. You can't optimize what you can't measure. In my book, I have a chapter on digital analytics where I talk about website usage statistics, search visibility statistics, user experience and video session recording statistics, and website performance statistics as sort of being the baseline, the minimum viable analytics that you need.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a dirty little secret in analytics that no one acknowledges. And that is that, in order to really get any reliable information from analytics, you need traffic. You need enough traffic for the information to be statistically relevant. Well, most people, when they're getting started, don't have traffic, yet they've got the analytics. So do you have any sort of advice for a company maybe with less than 10,000 or maybe even less than 5,000 monthly visitors to their website, looking to glean some relevant data from their Google Analytics? What should they be looking at?
I think they can use what they have certainly to give them directional indicators and to give them directional information that they can then maybe create some hypotheses and test. And that's what I do. And so what are we trying, based on what you're trying to achieve, based on whatever your business plan is, what your business outcomes are, the KPIs that you've identified, with what we have here, what should we test? And I think that's really important, because if you don't test, then you won't know. But then you've really got to, once you've formulated your hypothesis and you know what you are testing, I think the PR pieces that are ignored can be really helpful at that stage. So kind of the foundational PR pieces, the message development, the community building, those kinds of things that are so critical to generating visibility and awareness to bring that traffic, as you rightly pointed out, to your website. A lot of that is often not considered earlier on. And I see this a lot with startups, especially. They're like, oh, we want to get into, X phase before we do PR. No, you should be doing PR right at the beginning. You should, if you really understand that PR is about building relationships, then that's what you should be doing at the beginning. Who are your potential influencers? Who are your potential evangelists? Because that can help you in so many different ways. It can help you build that product, build that service, start to seed your story. And then all of that starts to have that ripple effect and get people learning more about you, looking for you, talking about you, sharing your information, and so on. So I think that's the approach I would take.
I can remember the days before the internet, when I was in PR and I would do media relations, I would do a mailing via post of press releases, and then I would call to follow up.
Yeah.
And I can remember the year when I called and I heard keystrokes as I was talking, and they were searching me as I was pitching.
Wow.
And it was the first realization that, really the digital presence needs to be in sync with whatever I'm pitching, or they're not going to believe what I have to say.
Yeah.
And that's, and now I kind of feel like, before you can do PR, since the website has replaced the press kit, I feel like before you can do PR, you need a good website.
Yeah.
Because they check you out. And then I also feel like before you can do PR, you got to have more than 3 followers on Facebook. I mean, you don't have to have a gazillion, but you just have to have enough of a community that I know you're not a ghost, that I know you're legitimate. So I kind of feel like the first hurdle is your website, owned media. The second hurdle is social media, shared media. And then the third hurdle now is earned. And I feel like a lot of people who go to PR without looking after their website and their social first don't have the greatest results.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of ambivalent about the social piece. I completely agree on the website, but for me, PR can be so instrumental in the other pieces, because who is your audience? What's your message? What's the call to action? What is the behavior? What is the outcome you're working towards? And I've lost track, Eric, of the number of times I've had people come to me and say, we want to do PR around this is this, but, and our website is blah, blah, blah. And it has nothing to do with what they say they're trying to sell or promote or achieve. And I think that's where the strategic thinking behind really good PR pros that really good PR pros have can really be an asset. So I don't think getting into the media relations piece, absolutely, that needs to come later, I think. I completely agree with you that build a community, build content, get SEO going, get backlinks going to your site, start to be searchable, like you said, within the first few pages of search engine results. When we worked with USA Free and HCR on the Blue Key campaign, which you might remember many years ago, one of the things that was one of the results, that because we focused so much on not just redoing the website, and we didn't redo the website completely, the microsite for the campaign, but we rewrote it significantly to be much more, targeted with the messaging points and the data points. And then we focused on building that community, but really seeding it with community influencers, being very clear and strategic in our ask, making it simple and easy for them to do. But then we really focus on building that community among them and nurturing the relationship with the organization before it got into big asks.
Yeah.
And then the content that they generated, not just with their original content for the campaign on the campaign microsite or on their websites or on other news sites, combined with their social activity, that was all set up with UTM codes and calls to action. So it was trackable, so we could see what was happening, what was making sense in Google Analytics. And that led to more media. And earned media per se was not our charge, but it did lead to media.
Hey, I have a practical question for you.
Yeah.
This is one I can never figure out. And maybe you've learned a way to deal with this. So right now I have to set up my UTM tracking codes manually.
Mm-hmm. Why?
And it's really a pain in the ass, because how else am I going to do it? How else would I do it?
I mean, so you're using the generator, the Google UTM generator?
Yeah. But okay. That's manual.
Just set up a spreadsheet with formulas.
It's such a hassle. It's unbelievable that there's not like a plugin to manage those or an easy way to deal with that.
There might be a plugin. I'm not aware. I mean, I have not been in WordPress world for a while, so there might be a plugin. So are you saying that you want to auto generate your
tracking
URLs?
Particularly for email, because email is such a hard one to measure.
But so what are you using for email?
I have a CRM called Zoho. It's actually an Indian.
Does Zoho not do it automatically?
No, they don't do UTM codes. No.
Okay. And so how many UTM codes do you plan on setting up?
Well, every time I send an email, there's another excuse for a UTM code if I want to track them in Google Analytics. And so I have to do them manually and put it in a spreadsheet. It's such a hassle.
So, okay. So here's what I did. So, I mean, that a few years ago, I launched my own online program, right? The Social PR Virtual Master Course. And there's a whole module on metrics. So I actually created a spreadsheet there where we just created a bunch of formulas so that all you do is add in your URL and your parameters, and it generates the URL for you.
Yeah.
So
But it's
you just
still,
need to do
man,
that.
I can't believe that they haven't figured out a way to automatically just push a button and get UTM tracking codes for any links.
I know
to the
that,
same.
well, some email systems do it. So like, when I was using ActiveCampaign, they would do it. I'm pretty sure MailChimp does it. Maybe, or maybe look at Zapier and see if you can cobble something together through that.
Yeah. When you say Zapier, I cringe. Because that's a hamster wheel I'm never getting off.
Oh, IFTTT.
Middleware. I don't touch it.
Okay.
So tell us, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how is the best way for them to do that?
Probably the best way is to fill out the contact form on my website, which is just shonaliburke.com. Via email, it's sburke@shonaliburke.com. They can always reply me on Twitter. I am not very active these days. I'm grateful for the people who still feel like talking to me there. But on Twitter, I'm at Shonali. And if somebody specifically messages me, then obviously I'll get tagged and I'll see it and obviously will respond. But those are probably the best ways.
What is it that made you less interested in Twitter?
I just, Eric, it was just everything that happened the last few years. I just didn't have the bandwidth for social, honestly. Emotionally, I couldn't deal with it, which I know sounds like such a millennial thing to say. No offense to our millennial friends out there, but tell you, it sounds like a very Gen X thing to say. How's that?
God,
I don't have the bandwidth.
Great.
It did not spark joy anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we go there for joy. We go there because we're addicted.
Well, and maybe that's the other thing that I really, I lived my life online so much that with these very real offline things happening, I needed to go offline to kind of figure out my life again. And part of my process now is starting to enjoy or learning how to enjoy certain pieces of those, because I don't want to get sucked into the addiction. I don't want to get sucked into living my life on Twitter or some, and I see plenty of people doing that, and God bless them, but it's just not for me anymore. I think, like I said, it's significant value for community building. I used to do the Measure PR Twitter chat, as you remember, participate in a lot of digital activities and activations. I love that stuff. I want to do that again, but I don't necessarily need to be in the center of it.
Got it. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Eric. Thank you so much for asking me. And I'm just so excited with everything you have going on. Congratulations on your book. I can't wait to get it and read it.
Thank you.
And I'm so grateful for our connection that certainly I think developed faster because of social media, but I'm very grateful that it's a real world connection. And hopefully I will see you in the real life